What if there was a podcast that did it all? Sports, politics, world events. Well, that's what we've got. You're listening to C&C Talks.
Hello, everybody. I'm Colin.
And I'm Charlie.
And welcome to episode 12 of the C&C Talks podcast. And in what is bad news for our editors, welcome back, Charlie.
Yes, it is good to be back. Just a reminder, we release every Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Our upload
Or Thursday sometimes.
Or Thursday. Our upload schedule is a bit weird. It'll be back to normal in early September. It's just a bit weird right now. Also, just another reminder, we talk about politics, world events, and sports. And it's currently Saturday, August 13th at about 10-ish Pacific time. And for Colin, who's in Maine, it is not a good time to be recording.
No, it's really not. So we'll make this short and we'll hopefully make it sweet. But we have a big announcement to start with, and that is that we are launching a new website. And I'd actually like to invite one of our producers, Zack, to talk a little bit about the website that he helped craft.
So we've been working on this for a while, actually. Actually a little longer than we expected to, but I can hopefully guarantee you that it will be easy to navigate. You'll be able to watch all our episodes there on the episodes page. You can also join our new mailing list, which currently we don't have anything set up for that, but at some point you will hopefully get emails about when our latest episode comes out. You can also watch on Spotify, find all our links there. So go check it out. It's the URL is cctalks.net, and go check it out.
Yeah, and you can also submit questions there. Pretty much everything that you could have done on anchor.fm/CC Talks. So let's not use that one much anymore. We have a new website now. Again, that is cctalks.net.
And you can also, that's also where if you're going to ask a question, you can submit it there as well.
Yeah. So now let's get into what was a very, very, very interesting last news week.
Arguably the biggest story this week from politics is the raiding of Mar-a-Lago by the FBI. Mar-a-Lago, of course, is Trump's residence. It's a golf course and resort in Florida. It's related to the investigation of Trump into stealing documents from the White House. A judge found that there was a probable cause to sign off on the search warrant into an investigation for espionage by Trump. Boxes of highly classified documents were recovered, including nuclear secrets. Colin, can we get some more information on that?
Yeah, so something that I've found particularly interesting when talking about this raid has been the right's reaction to this, because they are, again, defending this guy who we've now learned could realistically be charged with espionage. That's a guy that they're supporting. And, right, there was so much when we first learned about the raid, there was all this outrage about, well, if they can do this to a former president, they can do this to anybody. I'm like, that's the point, is it not, Charlie?
Well, if they have reasonable suspicion that someone's committing espionage, then yes, they should go to your house and see what's going on. Because if you're committing espionage, which is something you're not supposed to do, you should be stopped.
Yeah, and right, even a former president is not above the law. Nobody is above the law. That's one of the principles in this country.
Yep.
And right, that's one of many different arguments that they had. They've argued that the documents were declassified, but they've also argued that the FBI planted the documents there. And all of these arguments, they just don't go together. But I'm continually reminded, right, most of them, there's a couple exceptions, but most of them are not stupid. They just believe that their voters are. And
that's true.
And their voters, to most extent, are. And the one tactic that's just disgusting is, so a right-winger, someone who was actually at the Capitol on January 6th, went and attacked an FBI office, was actually killed. Later that day, then, and that was in response to the right. But later that day, Trump then leaked to Breitbart News. News is going a little strong there. Leaked to Breitbart the names of the FBI agents who had carried out the search warrant.
Oh,
And Breitbart then, which puts them at risk because we know what Trump supporters are like, right? We saw
yes.
exactly what they were like on January 6th at the Capitol.
Yes.
So there's much more to talk about here with this raid, and especially since, right, Trump's in serious legal jeopardy right now. One of the things he could be charged with, if convicted, he could be banned from ever holding public office again if he's found to have violated the National Records Act. And then there's, of course, the dozens of other criminal and civil investigations into him and his businesses. But right now, we're going to move on to some very good news out of Congress, which is a surprise.
Yes, and that is the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act, which President Biden will sign very soon. Every Republican voted against the bill in both the House and the Senate, and every Democrat voted yes for the bill. So, what exactly does this bill do, Colin?
Yeah, so this is a very, very, very good bill for really for everybody, but it accomplishes a whole ton of Democratic priorities. If you remember the Build Back Better Act, it's not everything that was in that, but there's a lot that was in that bill that is in this bill. So there's some healthcare reform. And this might be the biggest thing, it reduces emissions 40% by 2030, which is the largest climate investment in our nation's history. So that's huge. It raises taxes on the ultra wealthy and corporations, and it was supposed to cap the price of insulin at $35 a month, but Republicans were able to successfully block that provision. Which, right, what does that say? The fact that they could have blocked several provisions. That's the one provision that they decided was most important for them to block in this bill.
Yeah.
Right, and there's millions of Americans who have diabetes. But ultimately, the big takeaway here is that Biden's doing pretty well. Charlie, can we get some more on some of his accomplishments in his first term? So, which we're not even 2 years into.
Yes. So far, he has passed the Inflation Reduction Act, helped with the bipartisan gun reform, worked well with COVID relief, the bipartisan infrastructure law. He's protected veterans to exposed to burn pits. He's invested in American chip manufacturing, killed the leader of Al-Qaeda, ended the war in Afghanistan, added more jobs than any other president in modern history, expanded NATO with the addition of Sweden and Finland, confirmed a black woman to the Supreme Court, and this is all with a 50-50 Senate and only a 5-seat majority in the House.
Yeah, so one of the most successful presidents in modern history, and I use the word successful to mean successful in getting their agenda passed.
Well, yes, and actually mainly because in terms of his agenda, which is more to the left, it helps to have a person that came before you that removed a lot of the more left things from the government, which he could restore.
Yeah, but also just the amount of progress
that has been made is incredible.
But at the same time, there's things like the reversal of Roe v. Wade that he had nothing to do with that is goes back. It's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. Although I think that Roe v. Wade is a bit more than just 1 step back. Yeah. Let's move on to Alex Jones's trial and what may be the craziest criminal trial, civil trial. It's not a criminal trial. One of the most crazy civil trials of all time, although he could very well soon be under criminal trial, as we'll explain in just a minute. Can we get some more on the civil trial, Charlie?
Yes, Jones was forced to pay $49 million to the Sandy Hook families. This is a defamation case because he said the shooting was fake on his show, InfoWars. Jones was told multiple times by the judge that he was lying under oath, and this is, of course, a crime. Jones's lawyers accidentally sent a copy of Jones's entire phone to the plaintiff's attorney, and that contained evidence that Jones perjured himself.
Perjured himself, yeah.
Text message related to January 6th, and these have now been turned over to the January 6th committee for investigation. Jones is widely believed to have played a role in that attack,
And we know
and
that he organized one of the rallies, not the one that Trump spoke at, but one of the rallies, actually in Lafayette Square on January 6th.
and a nude photo of Jones's wife. So the interesting thing about that is that he sent it to Roger Stone without her consent.
Okay, then. That's just...
Not something you're supposed to do.
No, it's not. And... conservative values? Conservative
Yeah.
values? Anyone? Going once? Going twice?
In other news, Trump was forced to turn over his tax returns to Congress. He will likely continue to fight the court order until Republicans take back Congress. And also, Trump pleaded the fifth 440 times. Yes, you heard me right. 440 times in New York's in the New York deposition investigation into his business.
How does that happen? Right?
I don't know.
The only question he was willing to answer was whether his name was Donald John Trump. And if you go back to 2016, he said numerous times that if you take the fifth, that means that you're guilty. Only guilty people and mobsters take the fifth, is what he said. And what do we see him doing now, Charlie?
Is that not what he is, though?
Yeah. I mean, we know he's a guilty person. I mean, right? Generally, guilty people don't say that the FBI is planting evidence at your residence. That's just not a tactic that innocent people tend to use. Let's move on to CPAC. Yes, if you thought things couldn't get any wilder, there was the Conservative Political Action Conference to come and save you. This was something that used to happen once a year, and this is like at least the fourth time in the last 2 years that CPAC's happened. It's where the best conservative minds and Ted Cruz gather together to I'm not entirely sure what they do. Promote outrage.
I don't know if the usage of the word best there, but
yeah, no, there's really no good minds, right? Mike Lindell spoke at it. There's no good minds at that.
The Mike Lindell guy.
Yeah, although there was an interesting speaker, Viktor Orban spoke at the convention, and he got a standing ovation. Now, Charlie, are you aware of who Viktor Orban is?
Yes, Viktor Orban is the autocratic leader of Hungary. He actually recently won his election this year, and he was expected to do. It was expected to be close. Actually, it was not very close. And I've heard some thoughts that the election was possibly rigged. And seeing what Orban has done, it wouldn't surprise me.
No, it would not surprise me or pretty much anyone, but that's who's getting a standing ovation at a Conservative Political Action Conference. The same guy who recently had a top advisor resign because they said he gave a speech that was Nazi-like. Right? That's who they're giving standing ovations to. We mentioned this earlier, but the U.S. has ratified the admission of Finland and Sweden to NATO. It's a big deal.
Yes, the U.S. is the 23rd NATO member to approve the expansion into that region, but 7 other NATO members still have yet to approve the admission.
Yeah, and that is expected to take place over the next month or two. But at the end of the day, I think it's pretty safe to say that Sweden and Finland will be members of NATO. Yeah. There's also in very, 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 very bad and stupid news there's a polio outbreak.
Again.
Won't sugarcoat it. There's a polio outbreak. So it's in New York City. It's only among unvaccinated people. Shocker. And it had previously been eradicated, but some unvaccinated morons managed to bring it back. And congratulations to some of those people, because they are now, some of them are now paralyzed. Can be one of the effects of polio. So congratulations. But before we move any farther, I think it's time for Charlie's Thing of the Week.
Yes, and I actually had quite a bit of time to think about one, considering I've been gone for 2.5 weeks. Speaking of which, last episode, Colin did very well where I was. He was just trying to make a joke. I was in the United Kingdom. It was a great trip I had. I would say one of the things I thought that was really interesting was we went to a Roman fort in the north of England called Vindolanda. It was the biggest fort. It was just south of Hadrian's Wall. The ruins were really nice. If you're ever up there, go check it out. That's all I have to say. That's my thing of the week.
Okay. We know that the English Premier League started while you were there.
Yes, it did.
How's that going so far?
I wasn't paying attention to it. I didn't have Wi-Fi.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great segue into sports, and we're gonna start sports with drugs. Unfortunately, because Fernando Tatis Jr. has tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs, and has been suspended 80 games. This is the shortstop for the Padres, one of arguably their baseball's biggest stars, definitely among their biggest young rising stars. He was about to come back, probably make his season debut some point this week. He's been injured all year because of a motorcycle incident. But Tatis claims he was using the drug to treat ringworm. It's unclear if that's true. I feel like you should always take cheaters' explanations with a grain of salt. But
that's correct.
But point is, the Padres lost a big player as they're trying to make a push towards the postseason. We saw how aggressive they were at the deadline.
They are right in a wild card chase right now, which is something we'll get to in a few minutes. They are in a really close wild card battle, and not having Tatis could really, really affect them. And actually, this could knock them out of the playoffs.
It could, which would be such a big disappointment for that team that's been spending so much money on their players and just traded away pretty much their entire future for Juan Soto, which is also, I guess, a big part of the future because he's only 23. But still, if they can't make the postseason,
yes,
that's rough.
And we have some news from basketball.
Yeah, Brittany Griner has now been sentenced to 9 years in Russian prison. We've talked about this incident before on this podcast. She had less than a gram of cannabis oil with her when she arrived in Russia. Sentenced to 9 years. I will say that they do have pretty strict marijuana laws in Russia, but still, I mean, really, it's a political prisoner. That's what this is. And the U.S. is still trying to do a prisoner swap with Russia to get Griner home. They are proposing to release a Russian arms dealer. We'll see if it happens. It might. We'll keep you posted on that.
And Serena Williams has decided to retire from tennis after the U.S. Open. She has 23 slams in her career and is indisputably the greatest tennis player of all time and is among the greatest athletes of all time as well.
Yeah, just what a phenomenal career, and sad that it's coming to an end. Well, what a ride it's been for Serena.
Yes.
Now let's talk about something very close to our hearts, and that is the Seattle Mariners, who have been playing pretty good baseball recently and find themselves right in the middle of a playoff hunt. As at the time we are taping this, they are currently possessing the second wild card spot, I believe.
Second, because yes, they lost today. They're half a game back at Toronto at the moment.
Yeah.
Half game back.
Yeah, but
so we should talk about the wild card.
Yeah, So they're right there in there because they have a pretty easy remaining schedule.
Yes.
Bunch of games against the A's, the Royals, the Rangers, the
games-
Angels.
Yeah, the only difficult series is that 2-game set against San Diego, and we play Atlanta a few times.
As well as the Guardians, and what could turn out to be a crucial series there.
That could be a really important series. Admittedly, Cleveland is leading their division at the moment.
Yeah, and 7 more games against the Guardians there. If the Guardians end up just getting really hot and continue to, because they just overtook the Twins in that division. If they just continue to climb and run away with that division, they're not a concern anymore. But I'm not sure if they'll do that.
Yeah, the interesting thing to me is the AL Central's really weak this year.
It's been really weak for a while, if we're being honest. It's been a while since they've been able to win a postseason game, yet alone a postseason series.
Yes.
But it's close though, right? There's 3 teams that could win that division.
Yeah. So if we're looking at the American League, I don't think Seattle can catch Houston.
Oh no, of course not.
I think the Yankees are fine.
Yeah, I mean they've struggled recently, but they have a big enough lead. What?
But they haven't been playing great lately, but I think their lead's too big to be caught.
Yeah, they had just had that incredible pace at the start of the year.
Yeah. I think the Central could go any way. I don't really think it matters very much.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of wild card, I think Seattle's going to be the number 1 wild card. Toronto's going to be number 2. I think they're going to finish with the same record, but Seattle's going to win on tiebreaker. And I'm gonna go Baltimore for my 3rd wild card. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to sneak in.
See, Baltimore's an interesting one because I feel like they should drop off, but then they remind me so much of last year's Mariners, who never really did drop off, finished just short.
They had that drop off in the early part of the season, and then they rallied the entire rest of the time, and they just came up short.
Yeah, and even without big additions at the deadline, made some minor additions, but nothing major.
I do think getting Mitch Haniger back and the addition of Castillo is really good for Seattle.
But this year at the deadline, certainly, and Castillo already looking like an ace. We saw those 2 starts against the Yankees, which were incredible, including that game this past Tuesday, which was one of the best baseball games ever. Yeah, but game of the year, certainly.
In terms of what about the National League though? I think no one's catching the Dodgers.
Oh no, Dodgers will get the 1 seed. I'm looking at Braves and Mets. I know that the Mets just took 4 or 5 there.
Mets are fine. Mets are fine.
But they're the New York Mets.
Yeah, I could see them overtaking LA. I could.
No, I think that the Braves I personally think that the Braves will win that division. Don't get me wrong, Mets will make the playoffs. They'll be the number 1 wild card. That's what they're looking like to me, but yeah,
I'm going to be honest.
What?
I'm going to be honest. I think in the last month of the season, Philadelphia is just going to go on a streak. They're going to be last year's Cardinals.
So that is possible, but my thoughts here actually on what's going to happen in the wild card there, I think that it'll be the Mets as the number 1 wild card. Of course, if the Mets win that division, that'll be the Braves wild card there.
One of those 2 teams is making it.
But then there's really 2 other spots, 3 other teams. There's the Phillies, Padres, and whoever loses out in that Cardinals Brewers battle. I think that the Cardinals will come out on top.
Don't count out the Giants yet.
I'm counting out the Giants.
Hey, I want to look at their schedule. I want to see how do they have left to play. I haven't really been paying attention to them at all. They used to be one of my favorite teams actually, but
yeah. So
let's see. They got.
This is the Giants here.
Yeah, they got Pittsburgh, Arizona, Colorado, Detroit, Minnesota, and San Diego to finish out the month.
Huh.
Which I think the series against Arizona is winnable. Colorado's winnable, Detroit's winnable, Minnesota's winnable. I don't think they can beat San Diego, but
okay. So here's the thing. I'm gonna be completely honest. I have San Diego missing the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think with the loss of Tatis completely, I don't think they're gonna. I think they're gonna drop off. And also,
They're going to collapse for the second straight year at the end of the season.
not only is losing Tatis bad in terms of just performance, it's bad in terms of morale as well. It's not good for a team. You expect your star to come back, and he's gone.
Yeah, and I mean,
the momentum they get from getting Juan Soto.
more than that, they've fallen off recently anyway. They just completely got destroyed by the Dodgers. Right?
Yeah.
They did not look like a competitive team in that series. So even if they do get a wild card, which let's be honest, with the roster they have, they should be much better than a wild card. Even if they make a wild card, I don't see how they're making a deep run in the postseason.
I don't think they will. And admittedly, it's hard to do anything if you're in a division with the Dodgers.
That is 100% fair. The Dodgers are an exception, and the Dodgers will pretty much be good forever because they have the money, they have the resources to make that happen.
Yeah, the other thing I will say is this team has no chance of making the playoffs, but they are showing huge improvement, and that's Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona's going to be interesting, not this year, but a couple years down the road.
They went from like a 56-57 win team last year to right now they're 52-61. Admittedly, they're 27 games back in their division and 10 games back in the wild card. They're not going to do anything, but they're improving.
Yeah, and, I mean, they're not obviously not making the playoffs this year. I don't think they will next year. I think that 2024 that could get interesting.
You know, watch us be completely wrong and watch them just 2001 the Yankees again.
Huh.
That would be great. Mainly because it's against the Yankees.
Yeah. That
I mean, the other thing, looking at the other teams in the National League and American League that I think are going to improve over the next few years. They're not going to do anything this year, but that I could see start to gather some steam, or teams actually falling off completely. I think Cincinnati is going to start doing a bit better. They're going to get some good draft pick. They're going to get some good draft over the next few years because I don't think they're going to be any good. But they're starting to build. They're not too terrible this year.
Yeah, well, so I think that you're right, but there's one problem, which is I don't trust their owner. I think that as soon as they start to have like a good young core that's actually like a good team, the owner's just again gonna say, nah, I don't want to pay it. I'm gonna sell everyone and we're gonna go back into another rebuild. That's completely unnecessary, right? Because this year's rebuild was unnecessary.
And they essentially just gave the Mariners all their good players.
I mean, except for Brandon Drury, which they gave to San Diego.
True. And
Tommy Pham.
And they still have India.
Yeah, I mean, India's not going anywhere.
No. And the other question I had, what happened to Boston? They just imploded.
Fielding happened to Boston.
That's true. Fielding happened. They're 3 games under 500.
Hire Perry Hill, and then maybe things will go better. Except don't take him from us.
No. I see. Texas has been our
Texas is going nowhere. Texas spent $500 million on 3 players this offseason, and they still suck. They're not going anywhere anytime soon.
Speaking of which, how can you be 50-64 and have Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani?
You know how? Because they're the Los Angeles Angels. That's how.
Okay, that's fair.
And if I'm Ohtani, right, I tell management this offseason, I tell management of the Angels this offseason, hey, my contract's up at the end of the year. I'm not re-signing.
No, because he shouldn't.
Trade me, or I'm going to walk in free agency and you're going to get nothing.
So, if he does get traded, who wants him? I mean, everyone wants him, but who's he going to...
Everybody wants him, let's be very clear. But the question is,
Who's he
who
gonna go?
has who has the prospects, and really, let's be honest, it's going to take a lot more than just prospects.
It's gonna
Uh,
be the Yankees.
There's
It's gonna be the Yankees because it's always the Yankees.
I don't think that the Yankees would do that because it's one player. It's a really good player, but it requires giving up several players. And one player, baseball's not like so many other sports. One player can only have a minimal impact on a club, right? Because if they're a pitcher, they can pitch once every 5 days. If they're a hitter, they hit one every 9 times. I mean, Ohtani's both.
Even in the field, you can't catch if it's not hit to you.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. And
I feel
like the Yankees aren't a great fit though because they don't have the necessary farm depth necessarily.
I've also heard people suggesting Rodriguez for Ohtani, which is a terrible idea.
First of all, yes, Ohtani's better. Second of all, I'm not trading away Julio Rodriguez for the world.
No.
No, I would never do that.
Yeah, no, that would be a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Who would he go to though? If not the Yankees, Mariners don't want him. I think we're fine.
Oh, I think that the Mariners would want him. I just don't think that they have what it takes.
Capability. So who's he going to then?
I don't know, and I think that there's still a very real possibility that the Angels just don't trade him because they're so deep in their own myth that he loves us. No, he doesn't. Or we can offer him the most money. He doesn't care. He could have taken more money elsewhere. That's not necessarily the most important thing to him.
If he does walk in free agency, who would pick him up? I could see someone like.
I think like anybody, right? Because money's different, right? Because
Oakland?
teams will find the money to do that.
And we've been talking so much about the MLB that I wanted to talk about the NFL a bit. It's first week of preseason is gone by. We've learned quite a bit. I'm excited for the season to start. So I just want your way too early Super Bowl prediction.
Ooh, this is good. Okay.
Who's it gonna be? Who's winning?
The AFC, it's the Buffalo Bills.
Yes.
It's time.
Yes, it is.
It's time. And in the NFC, right, here's the thing. The NFC's kind of weak. Right? They, as I see it, have 2 contenders. The Rams and the Buccaneers. Those are going to be the best 2 teams in the NFC. I don't think it's particularly close.
No.
But I have the Bucs coming out of it, and I, unfortunate as it may be, I have Tom Brady winning one last Super Bowl. I don't want it to happen. It's going to though.
My thought is Tampa is really, really good at mid to deep throwing. And I don't think Tom Brady can beat the Bills secondary. The Bills have an incredible secondary. That's a fact. Josh Allen is even if
except in the last 13 seconds.
That's true. Unless I don't think the Rams wide receiver core or Stafford's good enough to beat the Bills secondary. And I think Josh Allen can rip apart any defense. And if he can't, Singletary will do it.
Yeah, okay.
And if the Bills miss, I think the Chargers can go all the way as well.
Justin Herbert certainly has that talent. We are running out of time, but before we go, we like to get an update on some chaos that's been going on in Formula One from Charlie.
The season is in summer break. Nothing's supposed to happen except maybe some driver transfers. Absolute chaos. First, the retirement of Sebastian Vettel, the 4-time champion at Red Bull, now at Aston Martin. He's calling it quits on his career. Makes sense. Aston Martin hasn't been very good. He doesn't see the car improving. He's done. He's been replaced by Fernando Alonso. Aston Martin clearly wants some older talent, world champion caliber talent to teach the younger Lance Stroll how to win world championships if they can give him the car. He still probably can't do it because he's Lance Stroll, but this causes an open seat at Alpine, and the assumption was they would call up young reserve driver Oscar Piastri, who has a lot of talent. He won F2 pretty easily, and people can see him doing really well. So Alpine announced in a tweet that he would be driving for them, and then Piastri responded with a tweet saying that Alpine never told him anything, and in fact that he doesn't want to race for them anymore. So Alpine is scrambling at this point. They don't know what to do. They're trying to sign Daniel Ricciardo from McLaren. Ricciardo has been doing terribly since he signed for them in 2021, and there's a lot of thought that he's going to get fired at the end of the season and possibly get picked up by Alpine. So Alpine's suing Piastri at this point for some contract thing. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but we'll see how that goes. But Alpine's in a lot of trouble. And the other seat that I think is up for grabs, there's a couple other guys that need to renew their contracts, but I think they're safe. Yuki Tsunoda's fine. Lance Stroll's fine. Mick Schumacher's going to resign at Haas. And that's Latifi. Nicholas Latifi, I can only say him in one word. He's not good. He's bad. He's bad. He's crashed too much. He's underperforming compared to Alex Albon. I don't see him returning next year. I think Piastri will be at McLaren, probably, unless Ricciardo's there. Then he'll be at Alpine if that contract thing is worked out. I think we could see Logan Sargent, the first American in the sport since 2015, have a seat on the grid, and I think it'll be a very interesting championship next year. I see Haas improving, Williams improving. I think it's going to be a very tight midfield battle and a really good season next year. But we have 9 races to go, and it's going to be a great end of the season.
Well, I don't know about that. Verstappen's. Are you telling me he's not going to lock up the championship?
No, he will. I'm mainly referring to Ferrari battling Mercedes, the tight battle for fourth between McLaren and Alpine, and the lower midfield battle between AlphaTauri, Haas, and Alfa Romeo.
All right. And with that,
We're at the time.
Yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Make sure to subscribe. We have new episodes dropping every week on some day of the week, available everywhere that you listen to your podcast. Make sure that you go check out our new website at cctalks.net, where you can submit some questions, join our mailing list, listen to all of our episodes. Also follow us on Twitter at CC Talks Podcast. For our producer Morris, our production designer Zack, and our co-writer Drake, I'm Colin.
I'm Charlie.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and we will see you next week.